Poor have been misunderstood that they are not bankable. They are bankable. If their activities taken by them is bankable, then they are bankable.
The bank procedures were very complicated. In 80s, all application forms were in English. How do you expect a farmer to fill up even those forms?
NABARD embarked on a mission. Their primary goal was to identify what kept the poor away from the banking system and development in general.
After several meetings, I suggested to one group of about 15 people, why don't we start your own group? Every week they would bring some money and put there. Within a week, we got 2 or 3 more groups. Within a month, we had about 5 groups like this meeting. We called them credit management groups.
Together, they gave life to the concept of credit management groups, which, upon NABARD's recommendation, was renamed as self-help groups, or simply SHG. The 1992 RBI circular was like the first rain a farmer craves, promising a harvest for NABARD. But these rains brought dark clouds of challenges. Doubts from within the banking community cast shadows. The question remained, are the poor really bankable?
When the SHG program or the action program for improving banking services to the marginalized was designed, senior bankers and administrators, they actually laughed at us. I still remember the words. These are musings of an armchair economist. ये तो कुर्सी पे बैठे-बैठे कुछ भी सोच लेते हैं.
So initial story of the instruction of the 92 circular was, if they have saved 1 rupee, you can give them up to 4 rupees. So most bankers said that is too small because the savings in those days was 5 to 10 rupees a week. So the savings after 6 months or 1 year also was not such a large sum that a multiple of this would really meet their genuine credit requirements. That's what the banks thought.
Their argument was very simple, that if they had money to save, they would not be poor. What poor need is cheap loans and charity. They don't need bank loans, they don't need savings mechanism.
महिलाएं सिग्नेचर जो हस्ताक्षर है उसमें ज़्यादातर थंब लगाने वाली महिलाएं होती थी. इवन बैंक मैनेजर भी बोलते कि नहीं, हम जो अंगूठा लगाती हैं उनको सिग्नेटरी तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं बना सकते.
बैंक उस टाइम पे लेडीज को हेल्प नहीं कर रही थी. क्यों नहीं कर रही थी? कि लेडीज के नाम पे कुछ नहीं है, ना खेती है, ना घर है, ना कोई चीज़ ऐसी हो जो लेडीज हक से बता सकती है कि मैं बैंक में जाऊंगी, मैं इतनी प्रॉपर्टी की मालकिन हूँ. उसके सब जेंट्स लोग के नाम पे होता था. इसके वजह से उसको वैल्यू नहीं थी बैंक में.
Initially there was great problem of opening the accounts also. They were even spite of Reserve Bank circular, so some bankers were very hard not to crack.
While NABARD worked to bring banks to the poor, many, especially women, were reluctant to step out from the shadows of old traditions and social stigmas. Their lack of trust in those trying to help made the journey towards financial inclusion and independence even more challenging.
It was very difficult to start women's groups because men wanted to know what they are talking. In Talavadi, they came and pulled them out by their hair and they threw stones on the roof.
काफ़ी डिफ़िकल्टीज शुरू के अंदर ही आई कि महिलाएं घर से बाहर नहीं आती हैं. आने लगी तो वो लंबे लंबे घूंघट निकाल के बैठने लगी.
घर में नहीं बोले क्यों धक्के खांदी फिर है, के कुछ है कुछ ना है, दुनिया दे है ब्याज पे, ये है वो है. डांट भी सुनी घर वालों की भी, पड़ोसी भी ये हंड धक्के खांदी, बैग ठाई रजिस्टर ठाई की जा है. ये तीसरे दिन गांव में हंडी जा है. बहुत सारा कुछ सुना है जी.
जब हम मीटिंग करते थे, महिलाओं को कल एक जगह इकट्ठा करके उनकी बैठक आयोजित करते थे, तो बीच में जो दीवार होती थी उसके दूसरी तरफ महिलाएं बैठती थी, एक तरफ हमारा स्टाफ रहता था और हम लोग रहते थे. और हम सीधे डायरेक्टली उनसे बात नहीं कर पाते थे. हमें काफ़ी समस्याएं फेस करना पड़ रही थी.
बच्चों को भी थोड़ा एतराज होता कि खा जावे रोजाना मीटिंग में मीटिंग काहे की मीटिंग है।
शुरू के अंदर एसएचजी फॉर्मेशन तो हुआ, लेकिन बहुत ही कम एसएचजी हम बना पाए क्योंकि उस समय पे जो इस कॉन्सेप्ट के बारे में बहुत क्लियरिटी नहीं थी।
तब हमारे को इतना समझने की कोशिश भी नहीं करी, कुछ हमें टाइम भी नहीं था। ये डरते थे भाई बाहर निकलेंगे शर्म आओगी, झिझक आओगी, ये डर था कि हमारा पैसा कोई लेके ना भाग जाए।
कुछ लोगों ने ऐसा बताया कि कोई एक लेडीज आई है पुणे से, वो मालूमात दे रहे एसएचजी का, वो पैसा लेके भाग जाएंगी, थोड़ा सावध रहो, आदमी लोग को भी बताओ। इकट्ठे एक भी लेडीज नहीं आई जब मैं वहाँ बैठी हुई थी। तो
NABARD knew that the poor needed time to heal from years of suppression, and to help them gain trust, NABARD decided to train the banks, sensitizing them to understand what banking with the poor really means.
So we designed training programs for bankers. When I say bankers, not just the branch manager, but even the peon in the branch. Because if the poor woman walks into the branch and the peon says, "Get out," the matter is over there.
We invested heavily in sensitizing the bankers that this also works. Because unless I go there and see they are working, then I will not understand whether this is good enough for a banker to believe.
Bankers normally have the block level bankers committee meeting and district level bankers committee. Normally it used to be for half a day, and we thought that's the best time to post this meeting, hire a bus, take them to the nearby SHG, allow them to interact.
Bankers were not able to say no, but they were not really willing to say yes also. So that's why, to persuade them, we told them the entire procedure. I don't know what happened to me at that moment. I just jumped and said, okay, you are not sure about the recovery, doesn't matter. I assure you, from my provident fund, 50,000 each, that means 2 lakh rupees I can give you from my provident fund if you don't get any recovery. Or if you get recovery less than 70%, I am responsible. Then they laughed and they said, agree, as an experiment, we will try some groups first.
Banks were made to understand that you have to understand the specific requirements. That's the renaissance. That people will understand what the other party needs. And I structure a product to meet the requirements of both the parties.
With the training and exposure visits, banks grasped the concept on paper. For bankers used to checklists and assessments, evaluating SHG groups was still a major question they posed to NABARD.
I joined Bankers Institute of Rural Development in Lucknow. Some training programs were devised, people visited different areas and found out how they are functioning. And also there was talk about how to judge a self-help group, whether it's good or bad. They were all looking at it, and they were also came out with some principles. By using that, you can say which self-help group is good or bad.
Every group had actually a Panchasutra, and we were telling the bankers that look at the Panchasutra, do your rating based on that.
Self-help groups were assessed as institutions. Namely, did they save regularly? Did they repay regularly? Did they have training? Did they meet regularly? Did they keep records? And this was institutional criteria, and the bank lent them money.
Today, everybody fights for intellectual property rights. We surrendered that. And we told bankers that we will print everything, we will create everything with your name, your logo, and send it to your branches. You don't have to do anything. Because when your branch manager gets a training material which has an emblem of your bank, his ownership will be high.
Many banks, we had actually printed their reading material on SHG in simple form with caricatures and all that, not excessive text-loaded material, with a lot of drawings and all that. And most of the banks, Bank of Maharashtra, quite a few of them had got books from us.
He doesn't know it has not come from his head office. It has come from NABARD, but the logo is there. So all these simple strategies were done to create ownership amongst the banks. And once they started owning the program, I think the miracle happened.
NABARD knew that for the SHG movement to succeed, they couldn't rely on just one miracle. They needed more hands to shape the program. Hands of those who were already guiding the poor in other areas, just not in finance.
None of the NGOs at that time in the 80s and early 90s were into savings and credit or anything to do with finance. They were all social intermediaries. They were into irrigation, afforestation projects, into literacy projects. We told them that if you can integrate saving and credit and discipline groups much, much better, you can bring synergy to your programs. It can strengthen your program. And we told them that we would train you for it. We would pay you the additional costs that you're going to incur for building these capacities.
सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप ये नया ही मेरे पास शब्द था। उस टाइम पे मेरा उम्र था 21, तो 21 में हमको इतना नॉलेज नहीं था जितना ट्रेनिंग में नॉलेज मिला। तो ट्रेनिंग में हमको लीडरशिप डेवलपमेंट कैसा होता है, जेंडर के बारे में कैसा लोगों को मालूमात देना है, SHG क्या होता है, SHG किस लिए बनाया गया है, क्यों बनाया गया है, SHG का क्या फ़ायदा है, इसका ट्रेनिंग हमको दिया था। उसका बहुत सारा फ़ायदा हमारे काम में हुआ है हमको।
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. While NABARD had walked many miles in connecting banks and NGOs with the poor, rural women were now taking their first steps towards financial independence. With the guidance of NABARD-trained NGOs, they were breaking free from their past, embodying self-help and mutual support.
The self-help groups that we were talking about, those times, are illiterate segments of people. But this group actually provides platform for them to learn from their sisters these aspects beyond their savings and credit.
जब हम पहला SHG बनाए उसमें खाली 4 ही लेडीज पड़ी हुई थी, बाकी सब अंगूठा बहादुर थी। मगर हम लोग ने एक नियम बनाया 3 महीने के बाद में कि सबको साइन आना चाहिए। तो आस्ते आस्ते ये 4 लोगों ने 6 लोगों को साइन कैसा करना सिखाया। तो इधर से क्रांति की शुरुआत हो गई।
Today, people talk about financial inclusion and financial literacy separately. But this was a case where we started off with financial literacy. And they learned the basics of credit and credit prioritization, credit rationing, peer sympathy, everything within on their own, using their own money.
पहले जब बढ़ाई तो एक सादा 5 रुपए की कॉपी मंगा ली, ठीक है। 5 रुपए की कॉपी मंगाई थी, अब मैं नाम लिखती हूँ या पप्पू देवी या का 10 रुपया आ गया, उधार नहीं लियो तो ब्याज छोड़ दियो। ये तो सबको पता है कि सेठ साहूकार को 10-10 रुपया सैकड़े दे रहा, तो हमने तो 2 रुपया सैकड़ा ही तो रखियो। ट्रेनिंग से हमने सीखी है, सीखने के बाद में वो बनाना भी तनपट बनाना सीखी है, मीटिंग लिखनी सीखी है, प्रस्ताव लिखना, प्रस्ताव मन से नहीं लिखा जाता, प्रस्ताव सबकी समस्या पूछते हुए लिखा जाता है कि आज अपना समूह में कौन सा प्रस्ताव है।
These women, once concealed by the veil of societal constraints, were discovering their voices through these groups. This affinity made their voices rise with a strength that began to pierce through and soften the rigid societal structures that once held them back.
10 रुपये भी मांगता नहीं तो डर लगो कि काई के लिए ले रही है। 10 सवाल पूछा घर का, काई चाहिए तेरे को, जो चीज़ हमसे कहे।
2-4 बार तो बताई भी नहीं हमने, डरा घर वालों से खी नहीं, गुपत चुपत करता भी है।
फिर अब उनको मान ले महीना पे वार्षिक लेता है, जैसे आज ये महीना पे आने ले लिया, दूसरा महीना पे आने ले लिया, ऐसे बराबर ही बांटता। तो उनके ये पैसे कहाँ से हैं कि हमने 10-10 रुपये की बचत करी, वहाँ से आए हैं।
फिर धीरे धीरे जैसे हमको फायदा दिख तो रही हो, बता रही हो, कैसे करती हो तुम, ये कैसे लेती हो, समूह में कैसे लोन लेती हो। फिर उनको हमने बताया हम ऐसे ऐसे लेवे।
अब खुद ही दे देवे कि आज तो तेरी कोऑपरेटिव हो रहे है, आज तो 200 रुपये चाहिए, तो 200 रुपये पहले दे जाए।
असं म्हणजे बरंच पाहून लोकांना पण वाटायचं की म्हणजे हे काय करणारच नाही ना, की म्हणजे असं कधी बोलणं नाही, कधी काय नाही, कुणाच्या जायचं पण नाही, असं म्हणजे कधी जाणं पण नव्हतं.
माझ्या मिसेस शेतीच पाहायच्या नाही का, पण आता त्यांना कळतंय की आपण आता मी नाबार्डमध्ये गेलं की किती मान सन्मान मिळतोय नाही का, किती वेगळं पण आहे.
पहले हमें किसी चीज़ के बारे में कोई ज्ञान नहीं था। अब समूह में मिलने के बाद हमें पता चला कितनी हमारी पंचायत में भागीदारी है, कि कौन कौन से हमारे हक हैं, कहाँ पर हम जा सकते हैं, कहाँ पर हम बोल सकते हैं। हमारा भी अधिकार इतना ही जितना जेंट्स का है।
In 2 years' time, about 600 odd SHGs had been financed, about 50 lakh rupees had been given as loans. But luckily, those were not the days of mobile phones. There were no computers. So this great secret that 600 SHGs have been financed was never shared by us with anybody. Because the moment we would have shared this, everybody would have said, 500 SHGs successfully financed, project closed. And we never wanted the project closed. So we just kept quiet and kept telling banks, please go on, please go on, please go on.
The initial target of financing 500 SHGs was successfully achieved by NABARD. However, the main goal of their mission, the fight against poverty through bank linkage, was far from over.
Subsequently, we had a meeting with all the banks. We asked them, what is it holding you back? Now that we gave this idea to you, we gave you how to do this, we told you where they are. And that was the time when many of the senior bankers expressed the view that if they get some instruction, as they called it, from Reserve Bank of India, who's their boss, then they would be willing to take the first steps.
1994, Reserve Bank of India thought it prudent enough to set up a working group on NGOs and SHGs under the chairmanship of the then Managing Director of NABARD, Mr. S.K. Kalia. Before they recommend anything, the members on their own, in the ground, across various states in the country, they went and saw how actually they are working, and basically they recommended that this is one of the most important ways of providing banking services to rural poor. Based on that recommendation, Reserve Bank of India came up with the circular in April 1996, where they had said that SHG Bank Linkage Program should become a part of their corporate strategy. The loan that they are providing to the SHGs will become a part of the priority sector, irrespective of the activity. Reserve Bank of India at that point of time allowing informal groups to have savings linkage, asking banks to do what NABARD is saying. Coming out of this circular, we can say they were way ahead of their times to see that this is the method by which I can provide banking services to the rural poor.
I was given the target by my chairman, and it had to be an audacious target. First he said 1 lakh, then he said, no, 1 lakh though is too small a number, it should be 1 million. Can we create 1 million SHGs in 10 years' time? And that was the challenge that we had.
Subsequently, when we had to expand the program, it involved huge amount of social mobilization. And we were looking at who are the partners with whom we could socially mobilize communities, educate them of the benefits of savings and credit groups like SHGs and so on.
We started with Mairada, but the kind of Mairada NGO you can count on one finger. you needed large number of NGOs. So I went to my chairman, Mr. Nanda was the chairman at that time, and I said, sir, I want 20 crore rupees to train NGOs. He said, but this is expenditure. So how do I justify that I should give such a large amount to them? Yes, sir, this will result into about 5% of NABARD's total refinance, and that 5% will generate enough interest income for NABARD to cover this 20 crores. He said, yes, sold.
We again stumbled on a great paradox there. You always find NGOs in good numbers in relatively well-developed areas. But you go to Northeast, you go to places like Bihar, Chhattisgarh and UP, you didn't have NGOs at all.
So we first identified 5 or 6 good NGOs who had already gone into the SHG movement in different states, and then requested them, then can you become the training house for other NGOs, smaller NGOs in your state, and we will fund the training program. But who do you train? There must be certain basic qualifications that a person should have. So we went to Indira Gandhi Open National University, created a 9-month certification program on SHG formation and financing, and told NGOs that you will get our grant only if your staff has this certificate. And we will not fund you for that part. Your staff will have to pay the examination fee themselves. But if they pass, we will not only reimburse the fee, we will get a 200% reward also. So thousands of people enrolled with the Indira Gandhi Open National University.
Trainings were done on a massive scale. It was replicated, I think. It was running in thousands. And that is when we realized that we were running short of funds.
With an ambitious target of 1 million SHGs in mind, the seeds sown by NABARD needed the support of the entire nation to bring this movement to full bloom. In the coming years, the SHG story was set to exceed NABARD's initial expectations. Like any efficient parent, NABARD would evolve from being a guardian to a friend.
गौरी महादेव और नाबार्ड ने हमें सारी चीजें सिखा दी. तुम जाओ बैंक से पैसे लो.
सबसे पहले मुझे लोन मिली थी ना, उसमें मैं तो सिलाई मशीन खरीदी थी मैंने.
घर में जो परेशानी थी वो मैंने समूह द्वारा ही अपने घर को मतलब ठीक किया है.
So many of them have started their own enterprises. Many of them have got into federation. They have formed farmers producer companies.
महिलाएं एक्टिव हुई हैं, खुद के प्रति जागी है, अपने घर के प्रति जागी है.
The dream of financing the rural poor was destined to unfold in ways that would inspire everyone.